Okay, greetings everyone. It's another family legacy interview. I am your host, Elmira, and today we have with us, please state your name. What's your name?
John Albert Pemberton.
Okay, well tell me a little bit about your family and your upbringing. Basically what you know.
So what I know that my father was had dropped out of high school when he was in the sixth grade to help raise his family because his dad passed. And from that, you know, we he grew he contributed to a loving family. As a result of that, all his siblings loved him, and he expressed that love to us. You know, mom and dad, and I guess we probably had an unusual future because we were probably the poorest people in the neighborhood. We were so poor we didn't know we were poor, but
That's
we
the
did,
good kind.
yeah. And we did everything together. Mom didn't, and when I look back over it, mom used to, in the morning, when in the summertime, we would go outside and after breakfast, and she would let us stay there all day. You know, as siblings, we just learned how to get along. We fought together. She never knew it. We did things together, and just a basic fellowship developed out of that. And we kind of got their skills as a result of that. We all are giving, and you know that you're a giver also. So that's uh, and I remember my dad having a rather tragic accident, and I remember how good the people were to us. We never wanted for anything. And
Hmm.
people of all races came and assisted us and prayed for us and did some everything for us. And he was never distressed about that. You know, he overgrew that. He was never at the point where he didn't think he would ever work anymore, but he had the desire to work again. And the good thing about him, he taught us a lot. Boys, he taught us a lot of things. He wasn't a real talkative person in his when I was a kid. He may have become that later on when your mom came along. But he taught us a lot of things, and a lot of things that he wanted us to know as men. He actually took us to some of those places that we shouldn't go. And I just got to tell you, I never wanted to go back when we left. He take my brother Jimmy and I never wanted to go back to that thing. And it had a great impact on our lives. Mom didn't like that, but she never told him not to. And it turned out to be a good thing for us and we didn't even talk about it. And I remember one time I was pretty hot with a young lady, and I was thinking about getting married.
Mm-hmm.
And he took my brother and I, and I was sitting in the middle. We went to get some wood, and I was sitting in the middle of the truck, and he just told me why that was a bad thing to be, and I didn't say nothing, and he didn't say no more about it. He didn't. And from time to time, he would mention the person, even after I left home. The person would give him messages, and he would give me the message, but he knew, and we could chuckle about what he had told me. But I wouldn't trade nothing from my childhood, even the poor childhood. I just don't believe it was anything educational any better than that. We didn't get to participate in a lot of things that other kids had because we didn't have a car.
Mm-hmm.
And so on Saturday afternoons, when the other families would be at the ball game and things, mom would teach us some things. You know, she would teach us tell us some things about life. And it weren't in a lecture form. She would just ask some questions, then she started telling us it from time to time until I left home. She did that. And so I loved and I cherished my family. And we didn't have a sister till your mom came along. And you know what the distance is between us, right? It's about
Yeah.
13
Well, what
years.
is the distance? Is it almost
It's,
20 years?
it's 13 years.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, we were so happy to get up, but I was ready to leave home then, you know. So I didn't get to grow up with them. And I, learned a lot about it, after you guys were being born.
Mm-hmm.
So Billy and Coretta and Billy, we lived in Norfolk and they lived in Norfolk. So I saw them from time to time, and we went to see them. But it was a good life. But I knew I had to leave New Kent, and so I said I would never come back. But I still cherish the family. I just think that there's nothing like the family that we have.
Definitely. I love what you talked about. mainly the lessons you learned from your mom and your dad, and they weren't lessons built on necessarily because you had money. It was, you talked about your dad taking the boys out to places you shouldn't go, but then, your mom didn't say too much. But then on those days when everybody else was at the ballpark, your mom would have y'all, kind of teaching you lessons, life lessons. What
Yeah.
where do you think your parents got their inspiration to do this? Knowing where they came from, where was their inspiration from?
I just think my dad had a good relationship with grandma,
Mm-hmm.
and he was it was something for him to be able to take care of all those siblings. It was a total of 11 siblings, but all of them went at home when he was there. But I think it might have been somewhere between 8 and 9 that he had to help take care of. So giving up your school and probably what was all ahead of you, that was a great thing for him to be able to do that. And he never whined about it. He never told us about it. We learned it from the aunts and uncles.
Oh.
And the aunts and uncles were just so marvelous to him. Every one of them was to us. And to my mom, she was really a sister. But there was a time when everybody was out of the house and my mom lived with grandma, and grandma thought the world of her. As a result of grandma thought the world of us. My brother, yeah, we used to spend weekends with her. Yeah, she was sweet right up until she passed.
What do you remember? So you're speaking, tell us the name of who you're speaking of, your grandmother, so we know
Grandmother
on
Laura,
record.
because grandmother Laura was the grandmother on my dad's side, and then the grandmother on my mom's side, she had passed before I was even born. But her father was, he was really proud of us too. He had a lot of fun with us. He was like we did. He didn't have a lot to give us other than his love. And he
Mm-hmm.
gave that to us. Yeah, yeah, he made sure he did that.
What would you say, because you're speaking a lot about love and things that, inanimate objects, not necessarily physical things that were passed down in the Pemberton family. What would you say is something that has been passed down in the Pemberton family, no matter where you are? What one word would you describe? Is it love, or is it something else? What do you see as a common theme?
Well, a common theme for me is that I love people. I love taking
Mm.
care of people. Yeah. And so that's family, and then neighbors and people that I come in contact with. I'm always watching and listening. And just this morning, I have a neighbor that's hadn't seen him but 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
and his car normally was outside, and I hadn't seen the car. And normally his wife would be walking the dogs, and I get a chance to say something to her, but she didn't walk the dogs, and that's the time that I was home. So I went this morning. I was out working on my truck in the garage, and I saw him back out of the garage. They both got in the car, and he normally comes back to the garage, turn left, goes out the gate.
Yeah.
But today, and I was just thinking, wow, what would it be if he turned left, they're going to the compound and come back where I could see him? Well, it actually happened. He came into the drive up and pulled up in my driveway, and I said, well, where you been? He says, I have been overcoming stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I'm in stage 2 right
Whoa.
now. And so I said to him, after I heard everything he told me, I said, I'm going to pray for you.
Mm-hmm.
His wife almost jumped out of the car. But the real truth of the matter is that I have prayed practically every day for all of the families in there. So he stays right in front of me. So he wasn't. When I leave home in the morning, when I'm flying somewhere, I just pray on the street while I'm waiting on the Uber.
Right.
Yeah, I just walk in front of them. So I'm always concerned about people, and people have been good to me as a result.
I would say I love that about you. I never knew that. See, this is what we learning some new stuff here. But I would, to me, it's a quality about you praying for people, thinking about you, which has led to your longevity. What would you agree?
I will agree because mine is by the scripture. I'm trying to be the best man I can. So, and I'm in a prayer group every Saturday morning. For this week it was 2 hours. It's normally about 12 men. I don't know only one man
Mm-hmm.
in the group, and they're from all walks of life. And so the things that some of these things is happening in your life, so you can be a you can help them out. Other things you read about them, some of them already happened to you, and you came out, smelling like roses in them, and so you share things with them. And God puts in there some people that to kind of like test you in the group. We have in the group a young man who came to us. He had just got baptized. He probably got baptized 6 weeks ago, and he's having some problems in his marriage. And when he got baptized, they didn't tell him much, So somebody invited him to the group, and I have to tell you that he has been really inspirational, and the men have been inspirational in telling him as to the things that he has to do. And so you learn patience from them things. You learn to say things that's proven, that you've been proven in your life, and so you can inspire them as such. You probably have to know that I took, when I was a single guy, that I took all of on 2 occasions I took the family to DC, and I think you were part of that. Yeah. And then we'd had some other times in the previous year, and then Cyrus and Corell we went on a trip on a ship, and the year where Cyrus and I went, we should have took Corell that time too, but that's why I took Cyrus the second time. But
Right.
I still think of those two guys. Mom sometimes she tell me about them, but they're gonna be all right. Because some of what I see in them was in me.
Ah, like,
And
okay, tell me, because this is all about legacy and
yeah,
passing things on to the generation. What is it you see in them as the younger
yeah,
generation?
when I was going to school, all I want to do was get out. So I did just enough to get out, and I never got into trouble. And I just could tell you that in my last year, if the principal could, and I had a running buddy, if the principal could have let us go in February, he would have done that. But we survived till June, and I went into the military. But before I went into the military, I went to a trade school
Mm-hmm.
to make an application. The guy pulled up my record, and he says, "You didn't do a good job in high school." He said, "I'll take your brother."
Mm.
When I walked out of there, I said, nobody will ever in my life tell me that I didn't do a good job. From that day on, I did my best in everything that I do. And if I think I didn't do the best, I'll go back and correct that. When I take my lump. So I can see those guys. I got patience for them, and I have good conversation with them when I think about it. In fact, I was telling them a couple of days ago that when I'm back in Virginia, that I got this little project that we're gonna work at it. And I don't know if you know it, but Sarah's got a kind of clean bill of health and is allowed to do some more strenuous things.
Yes, yeah, his mom told me. Yeah.
So I'm going to invite those two guys home, and I'll give them some. They're good guys. I'm going, because again, we had family members that always gave us things. Yeah, even though we were poor, those aunts and uncles looked out for us. Yeah, they thought about us all the time. Aunt Josephine gave us cash every Christmas.
Mm.
Yeah, and Uncle Logan, every time he showed up, he started with Mom and went on down to the least of us. Yeah, so the family had a giving spirit. They always talked about it. They all loved it, and so it was just a blessing to have come from a family like that. Yeah. And today I have a great time with all the nieces and nephews and the cousins and Barbara was the first female in the group in
Mm.
our era. We thought she was a dog baby. With that, Barbara was our sister.
Y'all didn't know what to do with her.
Yes, we did. We babysat. Yeah, she was like a dog baby for us, and we would, because we had to wash dishes. That was the worst thing a boy could do in my time. And Mom didn't cut us no slack. every night we washed the dishes. And she would never wash them because we left them. We could wait till midnight. We had to wash the dishes. Yeah, and so that was probably the only thing that my brother Jimmy and I didn't like doing, but we did it. I mean, yeah. So
I tell you what, I didn't like washing the dishes either. I remember crying one time
this
because I didn't want to do.
well, now I don't care about none of those things. All them things I didn't like to do, it don't bother me doing. I won't go to bed without washing dishes. I don't
Mm.
mind scrubbing the floor and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, so all of those things. I
Yeah,
can
it's
relate.
kind of amazing the way life comes full circle. As you mentioned, you don't mind doing any of those things. Now tell me, because you talked about your parents, you talked about where you grew up, the giving spirit in the family. Specifically, state where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Navy. Believe me, I did.
Oh, I like that.
I grew up in the Navy because it was well ingrained in my mind about doing the best job I could. So when I arrived at my first station, and the time I joined the military was probably about 3 years after the Korean War, and there was a lot of excess. Promotions were bad. They had too many people, and they had not, reduced all the things that they needed to do. And I will just tell you, I went into the most racist service there was. My dad didn't want me to do that. He told me that he had wanted to do that, and he told me what I was going to face. And I listened to him. I didn't respect him, and I didn't really let that bother me. And when I got there, for the year before, I had saw those colored signs on my mom's side. One of the Aunt Lucille, and you probably heard her talk about it. She had come to visit us, and we took it back to the bus station. And I saw all of these water fountains and all of the toilets and things. And that was my really first encounter with racism, but I didn't get it was just at one time. And then when I got into the military, uh, they sent me to be a steward, and a steward is lower than a cook.
Mm.
We were basically maids. I mean, that's what we did. But I said to me, there has to be something in this that I'm going to get out of it. Well, my first senior uh, person that I worked for he was a teacher. And in the evening, I would walk around with him, and he would tell me how things didn't happen and how it should happen. And I would say, Chief, why don't you show me how to do that? So he got in the habit of doing that. And I got in the habit of doing that because I was looking ahead that I just didn't believe I was going to stay where I was. And so I did that for, probably like 3 or 4 years. Maybe it was about 2 years, and he left. And I had some friends that we used to go out every night because the scuttlebutt, we call it scuttlebutt, but actually it's actually gossip. The gossip was that it wasn't no use in studying because there was no openings for promotion. So I ran with these guys for a little while, and then all of a sudden, there was a guy who came in the Navy. I came on the 29th of July. He came on the 27th. And this guy broke out of the mold and got promoted.
Mm.
And I gave up all the buddies after that. Next 6 months, I got promoted. And so now I'm a bad guy among those guys. But at the same time, this guy, every time he made one, I stayed 6 months behind him. He was at the top of the scale 15 years. At the top of the scale, 15 years, he was at the top, and he stayed there for another 15 years.
Oh my.
And I could never catch him. I could never catch him. And then I got commissioned, and he was still in the Navy when I got commissioned. He probably had 19 years, and I had 19 years when that happened. And so that was another change for me too. But I was able to scale all of the ranks, and I guess the hit home was I went to a submarine. And prior to that, in the Vietnam War, I had been in an airplane. I was a flight attendant in an airplane, and we used to cook in the planes. Can you imagine cooking in a plane?
No, I don't know what that would be like.
Well, one of the things is that the atmosphere controls your timing. And so pilots always want to get there the shortest time that they can to save fuel. They don't care nothing about you and you get back there cooking. So you got to compute all those things. You got to, one time I went 23 days in one. So
Mm.
you got to make 23 days of planning. You know, you got your clothes, your laundry, and all that stuff to take care of. And then I went to Vietnam. I think once or twice I went to Vietnam, and then my life was just so I didn't even care. I didn't think nothing would happen to me then in those days. You know, so I went happy go lucky, and I got to do a lot of things. But I just said, hey, let me try. And so I went to. I got a set of orders, and they and at that time I was an E6. I was almost to the senior level in the mid grade level in the promotions, and I got a set of orders to a ship that had 8 guys that had the same grade, and I knew that was going to be bad because I was probably going to be the junior guy. So I turned it down, and they made me some other offers I didn't want, and then I decided to go to a submarine. And so I had to take this extensive physical, and most of that was psychological. They put you in this tank, and I had my dress, wool clothes on, and they exhaust the tank into the compartment where you're sitting. So the temperature go up about 100 degrees. And so if you were going to leave, you would want to leave then. But I didn't. And so when I got down to see the doctor, he asked me, was I crazy? You know, was something wrong in my family? I said, no. And so when I got to the submarine, first when I went on it for temporarily, mine was out. And when I got on it, so it didn't take me long to realize that what I was going to do on the submarine.
Mm.
Most of particularly the officers, had spent 6 months of every year of their life underwater. So the everyday things you miss. So I decided I was going to be the common sense guy. For the things they missed, I was going to teach it to them. And that was in people. So once I taught the executive officer about people, and he was successful at it, other people would try it. And even one day the commanding officer came to me and said, you know what? You need to be commissioned. And I said to him, do you know who I am? You know what I was saying, right? And so he said, yeah, I know who you are. And so he says, I'm going to recommend you. And the exam was 7 hours, and I wasn't prepared. Yeah, so I wasn't prepared for that. However, I had a friend that was on another submarine, and he made it. And he told me for 2 years, John, I'm going to help you make it. And he says, I'm going to write the letter for you if you don't do something. Well, I was working for a guy who was getting ready to retire. And by now we don't have to take the exam. They promote you on your past record. So out of the clear blue sky, this guy comes in and he says to me, he said, I'm getting ready to retire. And I was working for him, had been working for him, but maybe a year or so. And he said, what can I do for you? I said, you can write me a letter to get me promoted. He came back with the letter the next morning.
Oh, good.
And word for word, we turned the letter in, and I got selected for the chief warrant officer in the following year. And it was out of us I was one of 3. I was number 2 of 3. And that started my career all over again. I had 19 years. And so I had to start all over again from the bottom. But all of the things that I'd accumulated when I was going up the other way were very helpful to me when I got to the submarine, and then when I left the submarine and went to a ship. And so it was just all history after that. I got to do jobs that at one point I was a junior officer on the ship out of 250, and I did things that nobody else could do. Yeah. So, and basically that one I played on my age, your age and your wisdom. You know, when you speak, you know what you're speaking about, and you speak fact. You know, and so as a result of that, you know, people give a lot of confidence in you. So that's how I got to do a lot of stuff. You know, my first ship, I went to a carrier, and that was 4,000, little over 40,000 people on the carrier. And when I went to the ship, I met the dentist. I was a supply officer in the Navy, and the supply officer is real, real. And I was a food service type in the supply, and that was a tough job because you feeding 4,500 people 3 times a day,
Mm.
and you're responsible for everything: ordering the food, preparing the food, conserving the food, keeping up with the records, keeping up with the budgets. You know, so under some adverse conditions sometimes. And so it was all new to me, and I was not afraid to do the things, and but I had God with me, and they
Right.
knew that too. Yeah, they knew that too. Yeah,
Out
I
of
had a,
all the things you talked about, because you talked about your initial, that initial assessment, which was more mental than physical, would you say your positions in the Navy required more of a physical aptitude or mental aptitude? What did it take for you to succeed?
it took both, and the people skills comes in again because you got the job itself, and I never let myself go spiritually. I had my
Mm-hmm.
prayer and my stuff. I wore Bibles. I got a Bible that's in a plastic bag where it came apart, and I keep that to look at it once in a while. But the issue is that I had the largest division on the ship. At one time, I had 500 people, and they split it. I got 250 after that. But the morale of the 250 is you have to be concerned about them. And sometimes people, as they grow in the service, they forget about those that are down in the trenches.
Mm.
And so when we have to take on supplies, we have a limited time to do that. And I get to interact with all of the junior people on the ship. And so I made a lot of friends that way. You know, we would have exercises sometimes that last 2 days. And you can imagine if you were up in smoke and all of that kind of grease and all of that and dust, what you look like, what your hands and things you could look like after 2 days. I would go when they were going to eat, and I'd pick out a dirty guy, and I would say, "I'm going to take your place in line while you go and wash your hands." He wash up. So I had a reputation all over the ship as a result of that. I knew some things that I could do, and I never told nobody else but them. And most of the young men came to work for me 90 days before they went to someplace else. And I always did like taxes for them. I did the income tax for those guys. I did all kinds of things. And I used to tell them that if you tell me what you need to do or what you want, I probably can legally tell you how to do it.
Mm.
And so, and one of the worst things was that they run out of money. And so when they ran out of money, I would say, look, I can give you food to have a picnic. You guys can all you got to do is buy the charcoal. I'll just, and so that it was a legend that it just went from one to the other, you know, when guys did that. And so I took a lot of risks for young men, some young men that had been worked for me and they were good and they got in trouble after they went. I vouched for them, and it wasn't always good for me when I did that, but you know, they became good men.
And I think I love that because I feel, I mean, you have to tell me your opinion because right now it is 2021, and in things that I've seen, there are some things lacking in manhood in terms of being taught what is necessary to do. What are your thoughts on current manhood, like young men becoming mature in this day and age? What do they need to learn? Is there, oh, what is that?
Maximize manhood.
Oh.
So I'm in this prayer group I'm in. We're studying that, and it talks
Mm-hmm.
about it talks about what a man's responsibility is to his family, what it is to himself, and what it is to God. So we are
Right.
studying it. This is nothing I don't know. These are things that I've practiced before, and I'm just wanting to do them better. And I want to share them with other men because I believe that we have forgotten who God is.
Mm.
That too many people, and so in the churches we've become complacent. And I just 3 times in my life God has moved me because of He wanted me to do something else. And the past one was, and it is amazing how it works. Uh, Here in Arizona, I'd been in the church probably like I came here in 2002, and I went to the church in 2000. I think like 2 years after I got here, so around 2005, I think. No, yeah, 2005. I think I went to the church, and I worked my way again. I began to look after people, sick people, hurting people, uh, people that in death, and all those same
Mm-hmm.
things. Even at work, I'm going through the same situation. 2 days after I arrived at the work site, a guy took his life. And I made an impact on them and not be thinking about it. I never saw the guy, but I went to his funeral, and his father was so elated that I would come to that funeral, and I had just been there for 2 days. And however, his son had heard about me and had told him. And so I get calls right now from former employers,
Mm-hmm.
and they tell me how, even neighbors tell me how, they call me up and tell me about, how I watched out for them, how I looked out for them. And some, that I had tough times with, they broke out and they are doing well now. I got a guy in route here from New Jersey right now, but one of my toughest guys, and he's on the right track right now. So I just get, I just get lifted up when they get lifted up. And so what I was saying about God moves me, after you get comfortable, God sees that you get a little pride, and he knows there's some more life in you. So he moves you somewhere else. But he moves you in good spells. Because I was a single guy for almost 5 years, and I said I'd never get married again. And I just traveled. And then one day I didn't like traveling no more. However, I had the last physical I had, the doctor told me, he asked me what I was going to do, and he gave me a negative on everything I told him. And everything he told me happened just like he said it was. And when that happened, I just started just saying, whatever happens, So then at Aunt Josephine's funeral, I met my wife. We had gone to school together, and I had been a pen pal with her for a little while when I first went in the Navy,
Mm-hmm.
and then that was it. But on a cruise one time, I was contemplating dating a lady, and one night I couldn't sleep, and so I got up and got on my knees. I was probably on my knees about 2 hours, and I didn't really understand what God was telling me then, but He told me that that lady was unyoked,
Ooh.
and He didn't want me to go there. So, and then when I got married, and then I said, well, I'm going to join my wife's church. Well, I don't know if you know much about Second Liberty. Second Liberty is kind of, when I was a kid, we never went to Second Liberty. They didn't deal
Mm-hmm.
with us. We didn't deal with them. And I don't know if you ever heard that or not. Yeah, they were the elites of the elites. And so we were not, we were persona non grata. Yeah. So I joined the church, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I don't know. I said, and God hasn't told me yet, because they've not ordained me yet.
Mm.
And so in the Bible study at our church, we've been studying that. We had a book and we just finished it up, and it's entitled "In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day." Sounds like a corny title,
Yeah.
but really what that is that you set some goals in your future, some things you want to do, and you try to do it. You put that together, and so I'm working through that thing now. What God laid it on me to was to become a prayer warrior,
Mm.
and so this is separate from the church, it's separate from everything. And the first person that God brought on my mind was Bubba Sales. So I called him up and told him, and he said yes. And in my church, there's a gentleman that one Sunday in Sunday school, he was talking, and God said, that's your guy. So I called him up and told him. And the third guy is my wife's nephew, and his mom passed early, so she's really his mom. She comes down, he does anything she wanted to do. So he was doing a job for us, and I had just got out of the Bible study with my Saturday morning, and I began to tell him about it. And he said to me, I'm head of the men's group in my church. And God said, that's the fourth guy. So it's four of us. We've not really gotten organized yet, but we're still, when somebody needs something, we pray for. I will call them up and tell them who the person is, and we begin to pray. It makes no difference where they are or who they are. We don't make judgmental of it. We pray for them. And I'm going to stay with them long enough to get them to be able to believe in prayer.
Right.
And that's what young men need to know today. They need to know who God is and where he is. That you need to be able to talk to God like you and I are talking right now. Young men need to do that. You won't fear anything, and whatever God lays on you, however he asks, you have. Yeah. So
I love that because you talked about the basis of manhood being connected to God and being able to pray, and you being a prayer warrior. How do you take the first step into, and this will be for men and women, what would be your suggestion in taking the first step into learning how to pray or learning how to be connected to God? Because we talk about, oh, I go to church, or oh, I have a relationship, but how do you truly, what is that first step? With your wisdom, what have you identified?
well, the first step, and most people don't know this, but the Holy Spirit is the first step. And you know what? Here's what happens. Do you remember what happens when Jesus Jesus came back to the disciples after the and stayed the 40 days? Do you
No, I
remember?
don't specifically know.
Okay,
Uh-uh.
so he told them he was going to send them a comforter, and that comforter is the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come to Christ, if we've come to Christ in earnesty, we got that spirit. Most of us don't know how to use that spirit. And when we read in Acts, if you start in Acts and read it all the way through, it'll tell you you will see how the spirit got there. Peter and Paul did a great thing at the ground teaching about the Holy Spirit. And so I believe that, I entrust it, because my life has been a focal point of that I can instantly, when somebody needs a prayer, I can go do that.
Right.
I can do that situation. It makes no difference, race, color, creed, whatever it is, I'll go for it. I'll go for it. And it works. Yeah. And my pastor, the guy who came and married us, we're like two brothers, but we have been in some situations, not for us, on behalf of other people.
Mm-hmm.
Brain surgery twice for one guy, and we never lost a patient. We never lost.
Mm.
Now, I've been to some where we're already families where somebody already passed,
Right.
and I had to deal with that. And I've done 2 eulogies in my life. I did one when I was working, and I did another one 4 years ago, I think. But and then you really got to ask God what to do when you do that. I'm not a minister. Yeah, so I have to do something. Whether the person's saved, I can't deal with that. A claiming that he's not saved or anything like that. I have to do the things, and so I have learned to listen to God, and it's happened to me so many times that you don't know that you are. But that's it. Men need to look out for other men, young men. We scold them, we talk about them, but we don't advise them in things. And when we do, we want to run them down by the church. Christ don't want us
Mm.
doing that. He don't want us doing that. He wants us to show them something within their lives that they can can do something about it. I remember one time on my way to work when I was living in California, I stopped in a little town, and there was this young man. He was probably like 17, 18 years old. And all the people right in the heart of town talking about it. And he had asked for $2.50. He was trying to get $2. So I went over to it and I took him away from the crowd. And I knew what he was going to do. I said, look, I says, you tell me this. I said, tell me that if I give you the 250, you ain't going to jump on the back of the train. He said, you're right. And you know what? I gave him the 250 and says, be careful, because there were other people on the train too. And then I left. I didn't say nothing to nobody. I didn't wait around to talk to nobody. I just left. But it had to be a learning crisis for him. He probably went no further than LA, which probably took him about an hour to get up there. And because he was a Caucasian swinging on the train, and the way he was dressed, somebody was going to get it. The police was probably going to get it. And it was going to be a lesson in life for him. So, and some of these things that we see young men get involved. What would happen if you went to the police and said, let me have that kid? What do you think would happen?
I don't know. A number of things could happen.
Yeah, but I suspect God would protect you if you did that. You went. They look at you like you're crazy. But you never know that till you try. And so those are the type of things that you gotta be. I was stopped in Nashville, wrong way on a one-way street, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Two rookies. I rolled down my window and I put my hand on the steering wheel, and before they could say anything, I said, guys, I'm lost. Knocked them back. They said, where are you trying to go? I said, I need to be on the other side of the freeway at that hotel right there. They said to me, we can fix that. And I was gone within 10 minutes. I was at the hotel.
Oh.
Yeah. So God is with his people. We don't, a lot of things happen that don't have to happen because we say we believe, but we don't. Yeah. I got stopped running 80 miles an hour at Providence Ford. Mm-hmm. I mean, right there at Bottom Bridge. And the guy, he tried to stop me before I got to the light, but a car got between it and he turned the light off. But I knew he was going to come after me with the light. So I got to the right. He put the light back on. He came up and I was driving a rental vehicle. He asked for my license. I gave it to him. And he came back. Rosa's son was in the back. They were classmates. He said to me, why are you running 80 miles in the speed zone? And then he just told me, he said, why don't you just go on and slow down? So I never get excited by getting stopped by the police. And the older you get, the closer you need to be to God, and you'll have an impact on those guys. But you can't fly off the handle when something happens. You gotta ward off the things that they want to do. The anger, the aggravation that they would want to take out on you. You got to ward that off. So, have you ever noticed that don't happen to women?
You're talking about dealing with police?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So why do you think that is? Who's the threat?
The men.
Yes. Why is he a threat?
Because you have the ability to access power.
We're a threat to their livelihood.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. We have access to their power. Yeah. So if they can find a weakness in you, they'll fix it so you won't have power. But God gives us power. He gives us power. He gives us, when you read about the Holy Spirit, he's going to tell you about laying hands on people. He's going to tell you about healing people. And so many people don't do that. I ain't going to tell you that I can just lay hands on anybody and heal them, but I can just tell you that if I go to pray for them, that God's going to interact. I'm not in control of what he does or where he takes.
You know, you spoke about the police officer. So I'm going to ask you this question because it's been at the top of our minds in the past year with all of this like police brutality, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, you name them, name down the list. Why do you feel, I know you alluded to it already, but why do you feel like these cases continue to make headline news and Black men continue to be either abused by cops, killed by cops? I mean, all of these things. What is going on? Because we've been dealing with this for years, and now we're in 2021. What do you see is going on?
So where is prayer in homes?
Hmm.
Where is God in homes? We had the best tool in the world. Can you imagine tomorrow in every church in the United States, every Black church, if we were seriously asking God and living up to the God standards, how much power we have?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so we when you go off and look in the scripture, God tells us these things going to happen. He tells you to fret not because of evildoers, he'll handle it. So when we try to take these things in our hand, and we granted they're happening, but we need to do something to try to help some of these things not happen. Yes. So how many young men going to be in your church tomorrow? Teenagers, young men.
I don't know. I don't know how many.
Yeah. So mine is probably going to be none.
Really?
No, there are going to be young men, college young men will be there, but there are no teenagers in my there's nobody in my church. They ain't concerned about nobody but themselves, and they are people that are pretty well off, so they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's not on it there, but most churches are not really looking at young men, and taking them somewhere and telling them something. And I'll just tell you, Uncle June was a great mentor for me.
He was one for me too as a female, so I can attest.
He just he could just sit down. He didn't have no boys then, no boys.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will remember the Sunday school, the church used to complain, but it was cold. And he came to my brother and I, and he said, "Look, guys," he said, "the church they are complaining, but when they get to church, it get hot at the end of the service." He said, "How about if I teach you guys how to come to the church early in the morning and make a fire that'll make the church warm the whole time of the service?"
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember how he taught us, what he taught us, but whatever he taught us, it worked. And he gave us a little piece of change, but he always had good advice. Even after I was a grown man, he was just telling me stuff, and I just looked up to him till he went. The last time I went with Pastor Goodwin to communion, and
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't talking in them things, but I could just see it in him, and I could just remember what a man he had been. Yeah. So and that's what we need. We don't have a lot of minutes for men. We don't have time for even guys that have been fathers. They're not really interested in, and maybe because I had no kids, that I have a lot of kids, but I didn't, I don't see things that way.
Yeah, it's almost like God set it on your heart to be a mentor, to say everybody's children are my children.
Yeah,
All of these men are mine. All of these women are, these young ladies. I have to look out for them,
yeah.
you know.
Some men and women, when I was working, we would hire people, and I could see something in that individual, and
Mhm.
I would say, for instance, I hired a Hispanic lady. She's 18 years old. And I asked her, "Why'd you apply for this job?" She said, and it was a custodian's job. And she said her mom had been a custodian all her life.
Hmm.
And I said, and I used to just talk to her. I didn't tell her that I didn't want her to get it feeling that it wasn't a bad thing because her mom got paid some good money. But I wanted her to be something else. And I told her that I said, I'll give you a month, but I'm gonna move you somewhere else. And so I moved her, but I also would talk to her about the finances and even some of the people, the company that she kept.
Mm-hmm.
And I could do that without getting in trouble. I never lost an EEO suit. I worked 58 years, and I never was caught that I lost the suit. I mean they found anything wrong with me in an EEO suit
Right.
because I carried myself well and I used God when I worked. I did 33 years in the Navy. I did another 25 years in retail distribution. And when I would pull up to that center in the morning, I would just sit in the truck and I used to tell God, you know what's on the inside. I don't, protect me. And I worked 25 years doing that. And I had some obstacles. I can tell you I had some obstacles, but every one God pulled me out of them. He pulled me out of every one that I got. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get into them because they're gonna falsify stuff to try to get you. And you don't have to overdo it and try to defend yourself. God will make it known to them and investigation. So then it's settled, and then there's a lot of things that's not fair to us either. And the guy who came to take the job when I retired,
Mm-hmm.
he had been, I probably was a general manager probably 5 or 6 years from him, before him. He made $20,000 more than I made. I didn't cry about that.
Mm.
I will not cry over broken what I don't have. God will
Yeah.
supply my needs. So I didn't let that bother me. And he like me, about 6 months ago, well, it ain't been that long, but 4 months ago, his wife got terminal cancer and was gone in 3 weeks. Everybody that happened that had happened to him, it was like 4 of us. He called them all to find what he should do. He called me last, and he told me he had bad news. So I was driving my truck. So I said, Greg, I got to pull over, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
call you back. And so I called him. When I pulled over, he's crying and tell me what happened. And she was gone in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I said, Greg, you need counseling.
Hmm.
And I said, I know what you're thinking right now, but it ain't gonna work. You're gonna try to do all that. I said, the company provides some good information. They sent me some information, and I said I only had to read 2 pages of it, and my life was headed in another direction. And I said, I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna pray for you, Greg. And I didn't pray for him then. I waited till he left, and then I prayed for him. But that night, I hunted all that material that they had given me. I found the 2 pages, and I called him up the next day. And I said, Greg, I'm gonna put it in your God book. I don't even want to see it, and we're gonna talk about it later. 2 days later, he called me. He said, you're right. I need it. I said, did you read the 2 pages? I said, that was one that a wife wrote to her husband. That's the one I want you to read. He said, I read it. And then he said, then and every week since I've been in touch with him. I didn't get him this week when I called him. He's probably traveling somewhere, but he'll call me when he gets back. But he's headed in a direction right now that he needs to go. But the other two guys wouldn't tell him. And maybe rightfully so, they didn't. They didn't need
You
that. You don't
said,
know.
okay, so you said the other men he spoke to, they didn't give him that advice?
They were in the same, they happened to, my senior executive vice president. We
Mm-hmm.
were very close personally. In 6 months before my wife passed, on the day after Super Bowl, the Super Bowl was here.
Yeah.
They came to visit me at the warehouse. And we had a long conversation. I had a good relationship with both of them. And this happened in February. And she had a relapse of breast cancer, and she was gone in 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so prior to that, one of the other GMs, his wife was longer than that, and she eventually passed. And I was friends with all of them, but they didn't offer up any advice. I guess I don't. He didn't even tell me what they told him. But my thing was the first thing started praying for him, and then one of the things I said to him was, "Greg, can I pray for you?" And there was a hesitation, and he said, "Yeah." And when I prayed for him, he said, "Amen." So I was going to pray for him either way. So when you care about them, you don't worry about what the results and what they're going to say. You do the things that, as a man, you're supposed to do.
Mm.
So God gives you the strength. He tells you what to say. Yeah. So
I love that because you really, you really trust in God and you take your direction and leadership from God and not from man itself. What do this, it sounds like this is headed into like talking a lot about manhood, but this is where you are and what you have. I feel like it's your legacy too, or part of your legacy.
it's
What
beautiful.
advice would you give someone who wants to be a mentor or be someone who gets men together to be better, or figuring out what to say, because some people don't know how to do what you do? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to get close to God.
Mm.
And you get close to God by reading the word. And today, a man needs to go into the New Testament. He would, and Acts would be a good place to start. And I would just tell them to get so that God knows you when you speak to him, and you should speak to him all hours of the day, all through the day. And my thing is that I don't own nothing. God has loaned everything that I have to me. And so I need to share that with someone else. And you know what? When I was working, and I'm not bragging about this, but I gave 19% of my salary away. Some to the church, some to charities and things. And I'm going
Right.
to get ready to sell this house right now, and I'm going to give charities some things.
Mm.
And friends that my real friends are charitable people, blacks. They're charitable. So I don't material things don't bother me. I had a lot of material things, and I'm trying to get rid of them now because they don't mean nothing to me. Yeah, but mentoring is a part of our culture. That's what the
Mm.
older men did for us. Dads, grandfathers. There was an old man named Carter Allen. When me and Uncle Lawrence worked on the farm. Me and Jimmy worked first, but me and Uncle Lawrence were really, really close. We were stationed together.
Yeah.
All our lives we've been close. We were friends. I mean, and I don't ever believe that we ever had a falling out. We would work on the same job before I went in the Navy, and there's a 3-year gap in our ages, and we just had a great time every day. And we worked for this old guy. There's a brother that had been in slavery, and one day and he was a great mentor. He would always show you things, and if you did what he said, you never heard it again. But this particular day, and I don't know how it is around the country right now, but it used to be a lot of dew in the mornings, and the dew leads up to rain. And so we were going somewhere in this truck, and there were some pipes that they were taken out of the pump, and they laid them aside the barn. Well, we had to get some out of the loft of the barn, and so I went close to the barn, and the pipe skid me into the barn, and I got out and used a lot of profanity.
Oh.
Carter Allen came down there and he said, "Boys, boys," and he gave a lecture about how we need to talk. And afterward, he showed us he got a tractor and pulled us out of the barn. And after that, until he died, I was afraid he was going to tell my dad. And my
Uh-oh.
dad, my dad and I went to see him when he was in hospice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I never even told anybody, but it was a lesson that I never forgot. It was a never forgot. And I never forgot the things that he taught. You know that, and he was supposed. He sat on that man mourner's bench from the time I ever knew him till the time that he died.
Mm.
So was he a Christian? I don't know, but he did Christian stuff. So and he went to the mourner's bench every time, every every fourth Sunday. He went up there and sat the whole 5 days after. So I would, and I don't want to bite him because I know what I know Christ was in him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So and that's another thing. We run young men down, and sin is sin. If you did something bad, we all sinful. So we don't have the option of running people down and talking about them and making them so they don't want to hear us and or be around us. We should pray for them and pass on some profitable things to them. Yeah, to I think one of the it's not a challenge, but I made it a challenge. Is that but my wife has and I don't know if you know Michael or not, but Michael has
I
down.
do. Mm-hmm.
Well, my thing is to be able to carry on the conversation with Michael and have a lot of fun. Michael and I have a lot of good times. You know, we have a lot of good things. I know what Michael like to do, and then sometimes when Michael's doing the wrong thing, I just have to tell him. But that's it. I just tell him, and then that's the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But he's good at working with me. He's a good guy to go. We go places together. And the things that he'll want, I'll pay for them things. I don't. That's a blessing for me. And so I can see through things, and he has a good remembrance. Good remembrance.
Now,
So
did you think, I know you have lots of kids, but did you think after all of these years you would have a son of your own? I mean,
and Michael,
yeah,
not really, not until it happened. Never thought of it. Never thought of it. I didn't even think about marrying Michael's mother. I didn't even know Michael's mother
right,
till I Josephine's funeral.
right.
Yeah. So
But you know what I see it as? I see it as a because this conversation has been a lot about giving, and it started out with you watching your parents and their loving and giving nature, and it wasn't all material things. It was love, it was education, it was wisdom. And so when I think about giving, it's a circle, and a
right,
lot of the things we give or that God instruct us to give away, it'll come back to us, and
right,
it'll come
right.
back to us in a different form and something unexpected
Yeah.
too.
One of the things that I had a lot of high respect for my dad. He only had a sixth grade education,
Mm-hmm.
but he had some. My dad knew a lot about surveying, and one time they were trying to find, and I don't know what know how they survey properties, and then they put a mark. They usually drive something in the ground to represent it, and it's something that don't that it doesn't decay that quick. Well, when they were trying to determine that our property versus the church property, the surveyor couldn't find that.
Hmm.
My dad was on his sick bed, and he told our Pauline to go tell that guy where that snake was.
Really?
Yes, he did. Another time when he was on his sick bed, the washing machine guy came to do a repair, and he couldn't find out what was with the washer. And my dad told him what to do, how to fix the washer. And
Hmm.
so it was that kind of wisdom that that he laid on us, that left with
You know, you know who inherited that? Well, all of y'all did, but that specifically, that keen of skill, Uncle Leonard.
yeah.
Have you noticed that he can whip off? I'm gonna give you an example. I was over his house one day, and this was years ago, with one of my friends, and we were doing, because we were teaching math, and we were going over our math, just calling out, and it was algebra. It was like this high level stuff. We just calling out stuff. He immediately knew that he was in the back room. He said, "Oh, the answer is this," and we over there like it wasn't like we were inquiring what the answer was. He can whip just like you spoke
Right,
about your dad can just like I know where the line is. I know how to fix the washer without it just something that came innately to him.
right, right, right. Yeah, yes, sir. He did. He too. He started out in the culinary,
Hmm.
and he was good at that, and he probably still is. That's why he looks so why he's so big.
Who's so big?
But Leonard, Uncle Leonard.
Oh, you
Yeah,
t- you talking about he started out cooking?
yeah,
Oh yeah, he cooks. He definitely cooks well. I remember, we grew up in the house with him, so he
yeah,
can cook.
yeah,
I mean, he can cook and bake.
yes, exactly.
And a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah, but your mom taught everybody how to do that, huh?
Mm.
And you know what? We did that. We should experiment. Everybody but Uncle Jimmy, he didn't have no problems with that. I'll just tell you something else in my last year of high school. They used to have a shop. That was the only thing that boys could go to. And I went to the shop 2 years, and they don't make no advancement between ninth grade and 10th grade. And difference, you just down there making stuff. And when I got to the 11th grade, I said, I had enough sauce. I'm going to take homemaking. In the state of Virginia, no boy had ever taken homemaking.
Really?
And as a result of that, all of the boys, with exception of Jimmy, took homemaking. And the teacher, she was so happy she had to get me she has that happened to her. That happened. The girls
So
didn't like
none of your friends, the guys your age, took home ec.
never, never in the state of Virginia, white or black.
Whoa,
No, no, no. But our whole class, with exception of one guy, took it.
that's
And it
amazing. And
and it
what
was
year was this?
this is an we went in 57. We started
Okay.
56, 56.
Mm-hmm.
And, and let me tell you, that teacher lives in the back of where my wife her house is today.
Hmm.
She takes it as church every Sunday, and she is just a jewel. She's 89 years old now,
Oh
and
wow.
and is independent. It counts, but she loved us. She loved the boys to death, and I mean, she defended us in some tough stuff, And mom used to tell us, every time she saw them, she would tell her how much she loved those boys. And there's two of us left now. Actually, it's three of us left, but she still loved all of us. Winston Macon is the other guy.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we still look up to her. Yeah, okay. But we gain a lot from her too. Yeah, so
Right. That's a great experience, right? Now, what's one thing you would like to be remembered for? I know you've done a lot, you've helped a lot of people. What do you want to be remembered for?
I would just I would just like to be remembered as a legend and taking care of people. That
Hmm.
the family members can look back and say, Uncle John did this, Uncle John did this, and not for me, but it turned somebody around, it helped somebody, it was inspiration to somebody. And so if you'll notice that I never tell you where you ought to be, I never tell you what you ought to do. But if you ask me for some advice about it, I'll help you with that. But
Right.
I don't want to. You guys have more chances and opportunities, so I just want you to go and take advantage of those opportunities.
Hmm.
Yeah. So when you are entrepreneur, that's a great thing. And right now, I'm trying to figure out something that I can do where it won't be so stressful. Where my wife and I can do those things, and we're working through some things. And we're trying to put together something that we can do. And she has the same kind of mind I do because in the neighborhood, when she cooks, she'll cook a meal for somebody that's, in the neighborhood and take it to her. She'll make a cake for the person. She'll take them where they need to be. Yeah, and there's no return, no tangible stuff to that.
Right, right.
So I just think I got blessed in that deal too. I know I got blessed in that deal.
Yeah, see, there goes that giving circle again because you've given so much, it was returned to you. Look, you were able to have two loves of your life,
Yeah.
when you think of it, just that's a blessing.
And it wasn't I didn't have a task of joining the family. The family just fit right in right quick. We had Christmas at Christmas. They all came, and I got to tell you, I had the time of my life. Woo! I had a great time with the grandkids, and they all grown up. All the grandkids came, and all the kids came, and it was tremendous. To one guy was kind of slow, and he was kind of withdrawn, but I helped him in a lot of areas when he was, you know, when he's kind of like down financially. I found work for him and
Mm-hmm.
paid him a decent wage, and so he knows that if I got it, he can have it. Yeah. So it's just that it's about living and helping somebody else to live, really. Yeah. And my brother Jimmy was the same way. He never get. I don't know if you know it, but he didn't give the kids an allowance, particularly the boys. They had to go help some lady fix somebody's roof or something like that. Then he gave them
Hmm.
something. Yeah. 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 So he did a lot of things, involved in a lot of stuff. He fixed a lot of stuff. And if you want to, if you interview Linda, she'll tell you about things that he did. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and he had an impact on us on too.
What you spoke about, really the overall importance of mentorship, of family, and of course this is about the Pemberton family. What Why is family critical? What Where does that rank with you? Just family, period.
You know what? The Pemberton family they were kind of a unusual family, the men in particular. All
Mm-hmm.
of the uncles, all of the uncles just loved all of the nieces and nephews. I think my first encounter with the uncles were Uncle William and Uncle Samuel. They had just got out of the war, World War II, and there was a big snow. And we went in, there used to be a field up where Al Macon lives. That field where we lived in that house. And they lived in a house next door to us. That house is torn down where Al lives right now. It is where it is. But they had this big snow, and we had a snowball fight. Me and Jimmy, Uncle William, and Uncle Samuel. Who do you think was on the team?
I don't know who was on
It
the
was
team.
it was Jimmy and I against William and Samuel.
Oh wow, the
And we
brothers
little
against
boys,
the brothers.
we had to be at least 7 or 8 years old. And they were in the 20s, maybe
Right,
21.
right.
So we put some snowballs in some water, and we battled them boys that they didn't want to fight us no more. We were out there all afternoon fighting in the snow. And so the comradeship between the uncles and us, it existed with Uncle Henry. Uncle George was a different guy, but still a loving guy. And he was more of a inspirational guy, a direct inspirational guy. But Uncle Logan was really a part of everybody. And he was big and had a lot of fun along with it. And when Uncle Logan hit the house, as I think I told you before, he gave everybody in the house something. And he did that as soon as he got there. And so we just loved him as an uncle. We were just elated when he passed. And right up until he passed, he called me up. I called him on the day before he died, and he was in the hospital, and
Mm-hmm.
he was joking. He had had cancer, and he never went back afterward. And he said he drove himself to the hospital. He was laughing. He was laughing at it. On that particular night, in the facility that I ran here in Phoenix, we got a pneumonia alarm.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that at quarter to one on New Year's Eve, none of my employees were going to respond. So I went, not knowing what I was going to do. I just prayed all the way down there. And when I got down there, the alarm reset. And at that same time, I got a call that Uncle Logan had passed.
Mm.
So that. So God just moved in mysterious ways, and the family. And I can remember when Uncle Samuel, you know, he used to teach. He could sharpen a saw like nobody. And my brother and I, we get off school. They used to cut pulpwood, and one of them would just wear us out in about 10 minutes with that saw. So all those things, and then Uncle William and I, we had some times together. He used me as a scapegoat to get at some of his stuff that he did, but they were just loving. And then the aunts they were always loving. They was always concerned about what I did in the military, and they were always inspiration that I need to do something that when I got out I could do something about. I could use it in the and they too, they never ran you down for what you were doing. They just encouraged you. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so Aunt Josephine, when she went to the when she moved into that assisted living,
Yeah.
you know, in her final days, the Lord said to me, "You need to go and tell her that it's all right for her to go home." And I
Mm.
never forget. I went up there, and Wilhelmina was up there,
Yeah.
so I didn't go to the room. And then Maria came up there, and so after Maria left, and she got a dinner, and she told me to stay, and I said, we were getting a little small talk, and I said, Aunt Josephine, I said, it's all right for you to go home. I said, everybody's covered right now. And I said, you know, you should have gone on home and I see some of your friends. And she said to me, you think I'll see all of them? and we laughed about that. I said, I just feel I can't promise you that.
Right, right. You're like, I don't know who you gonna see now.
Yeah, yeah, and so then was about maybe 2 or 3 days later, Pastor Goodwin went up there, and
Mm-hmm.
I called her, she was there. And so I asked him, I told him, I said, step out, I want to talk to you. And I said, here's what I told her the last time we went up there. And by that time, he was really close to her. So I'm sure he enforced that to her too. He said he wasn't. And I'll take his word for that, what he said. But, and then she went away peacefully, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and she had such a great interest in the whole family because when I graduated, she bought the suit that I wore to graduation.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. She just came over and said, Elmira, we're going to get them boys suits. Just like that. When I got married, she did the same thing. Yeah.
That's
So
lovely because what you're talking about with the uncles, with the aunts, and what you even remember as a 7-year-old, they continued that through their whole life until the
right,
next generation came on. It wasn't like they stopped and said, "Oh, we done with that one. We not
right,
going."
right, right.
They maintained the sense of encouragement, giving throughout their whole life. You talked about Aunt Josephine, and I find that fascinating.
And then, Barbara spent all the time with her and she really went in there so Barbara could stay at home. And Barbara just didn't
And
come.
Barbara was there the whole time.
Yeah, she did. She said, this is what she said. She said, so Bubba can have his wife back. That's what she
Right,
said.
right.
Yeah, and you know what? I gave Barbara a celebration, for Aunt Josephine.
Oh, yes, yes.
I still got those pictures, and then we had a fine time. I still got pictures of. Were you there when we took the one group picture with Aunt Josephine?
Actually, my mom sent me that picture. I believe she
Yeah,
sent it last week.
yeah.
I was there, but for some reason I wasn't in the picture. I don't know where I was.
You might have been inside. Then,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I did that. Yeah, I did that. Did that. Man, that was a good time. That short. That was about 30 people at that time.
That was a good number of people who showed
Yeah,
out for
yeah,
that. And it's interesting you talk about that because you hosted it, another example of you giving to say thank you to, well, not that particular, this was something different, but you've always hosted things just to say thank you, like you mentioned
yeah.
saying thank you to Barbara for uh taking care of Aunt Josephine, and to me we have to do those things because how we have to display our gratitude and just not just say oh thank you and not really do anything.
Right. Do you remember Orphan Crump?
I do.
Well, I met Miss Orphan in 1949. She came to Lebanon to register voters. She didn't come into church. At the end of the service, she came and to register people that were not registered. Prior to that time, they had some things that would preclude us as blacks from being able to register. That was something, and I don't forget what it was, but I remember my mom being a part of a group to help educate people so that they could get registered.
Mm-hmm.
And then an Orphan Crump and Aunt Josephine were great buddies, and so when I came back to Virginia, and the first time I went to Second Liberty, I met Orphan Crump,
Mm-hmm.
and I became a favorite of her because I would pray for her. I would go to the hospital and pray for her, and when she was on her final days, she just loved my wife because my wife would just go get kinds of stuff, food for her, probably something she shouldn't have had, and we didn't talk for about 2 weeks. And the day that my wife went in there was the day she passed, and she talked to my wife.
Really?
And she had a mentality just like Aunt Josephine. All of those crazy guys that I knew in high school, she knew about all of them.
Oh.
And we was just had such great conversations. And we took her everywhere. We took her. Her kids wouldn't take her places. We took her. Yeah. So I got pictures of her too. Yeah. So
Yeah, she's a legend, Miss
yes, she is.
Orphine Crump. Like
Yeah. 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 She's a legend.
she
And
is
then
a she is a legend. And you see, and you are a legend in your own right too. I'm sitting here, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking with him, Mr. John Pemberton. Yeah, I'm gonna
yes, sir. But there
any
were other
final
legends.
words before we close?
Well, I've enjoyed you, and you know what? This is about the longest time I've ever spent talking to you, and so I really didn't know a lot about you. Mom tell me a lot about you, and the mom's really proud of you, and we're proud of you too because Tennessee is probably a place we would have went.
Yeah.
So I have a friend that's moving to Mississippi, him and his wife, and they have been a blessing to me. And they built a home in there. I'm going to go down to Mississippi
Oh,
to,
nice.
to bless their home,
Oh.
and I will be there. They're going to leave out of here in the middle of June, and probably before the summer's over, we'll go down to see them and bless the home. So I guess
Mississippi is supposed to be, I'm not sure if they're near the coast or what, but Mississippi is it's Mississippi now. But it's
yeah,
got some
they're
nice parts.
they're right across from Memphis.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, they're just across the line in Minnesota. Actually, they have to fly in Memphis. And we were going to do that, but we're going to drive because we want to see some
Hmm.
things going down there. I've been there, I've driven down there before, but we're going to take some time and go down. It's a 12-hour drive, so we
Oh
won't do that.
yeah, that's a long trip.
Yeah,
A long
yeah. I went to
trip.
school in Memphis to the Navy sent my school down there too. And in them days, I wouldn't go to Mississippi. I can tell you.
Yeah, but now it's a different world. I
Yes,
mean,
that's
some things have changed and some things have not, but
right.
it's
Right.
I'm happy for the things which have shifted. Because as you
Yeah,
mentioned, if it wasn't for you, my mom, uncles, grandparents, aunts, uncles, I wouldn't be here.
I hear you. I hear
I
you.
wouldn't be able to do, and I'm sitting here in my office right now in my massage office. I wouldn't be able to do this.
No, because we didn't. You know, we couldn't afford that thing. So that's the first.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So why did you choose Tennessee?
Tenant, I don't, well, I did a semester here at Tennessee State and just got familiar with Nashville and I liked it.
Is that right? You know
Mm-hmm.
what? When I went to a school in Memphis, and we went. My friend and I drove down there, and we drove his car, and we had some trouble, and we had the trouble going down there. But on the way back, we had to stop in Nashville.
Mm.
In they asked Beeman Pontiac is where we went. In they asked us if we had ever had a tour of Nashville, and they took us on a tour.
Ooh.
That they did, while they were working on the car.
Oh, that's cool. You know that still exists, Beeman.
Is that right?
I've heard, I don't know exactly where it is, but I've seen the commercials and the name.
1975 when we went through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that wasn't a good era to go through that either because there were people who were shooting off the bridge, over the interstate when we come down.
What?
Yeah, we came. It was a bad weekend when we came back, but fortunately we didn't have any issues.
Who was shooting over the interstate?
That was some kind of I don't know what was going on at that time. I don't actually remember. I don't. I'm not. I don't. I think it's some type of a white group that was doing that.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, were they just in Tennessee or were they in this entire corridor or what?
They were in the quarter all the way up to Virginia.
Oh, okay, okay.
They were all on overpasses that went across. I think 64 was what we were on then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I remember that day that we came back. The speed limit in Tennessee was 75 miles an hour, and the police should
Mm-hmm.
only run 55. So we enjoyed that. Virginia didn't have that, so we enjoyed it. Yeah,
Wow.
so it was, and that was an interesting time too. I had a great experience in Memphis. I
Good
went to
old
the
Memphis.
I went to the Defense Race Relations Institute,
Hmm.
and I was there for 3 months, and I went for after that I went to a month and a half in Memphis to some further Navy training, some individual life. But the Defense Race Relation is all the military services and some civilians. And so and that gave me another chance to learn the other armed forces, to meet people, and learn how they did things. And then I worked in race relations and integration into the particular women in the military and in the Navy. And I worked in a group finally before I was commissioned, organizational development. And that's making the best use of people. And so in those days, they used to sideline people because of the IQ and things of that nature, and wouldn't use them. And so our job was to convince them that they need to use that manpower
Hmm.
or they were going to lose it.
Right, right.
And I had 2 really good years of doing that. Actually, went to the Naval Academy to speak with it was at the people that were going when the first women went to the Naval Academy. I remember going that year. And out of that class, one lady she went to the top of the heap. She was a 4-star when she retired. One black lady.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's so I've had some good times in my life. God has given me some good opportunities. I just cherish them. And I once I was going to write a book, but I just have not been. I've compiled some of the things on cruises to do some of it. I still got some of it, and the life is just going on. So I don't guess I'm probably never going to do that.
You should submit them. I actually work for a publishing company too.
Do you? Do
Uh-huh.
you?
Mm-hmm.
I will try to get some of that stuff
So
together.
if you ever need, I'm the assistant to the publisher. Like I help him talk to authors and he does ghostwriting and all kinds of stuff. He can help you put your manuscript together.
Okay, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that's where I'm probably caught up at because when I started writing, you know, I cut people down out of the things, and I think the last time when I cut some, when I made a cut at it again, I realized that I need to go back to Uncle June.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's been another thing in that the people that really played a part in my beginning of my life, and I wanted
yeah.
to give them credit. Yeah, yeah, some people
Mm-hmm.
there, Lilton Thompson. Do you know Lilton, the old man?
I do. He's the shorter man, right?
No, he was a deacon. He was these guys' daddy. He was Emmett's daddy, and I'm not. You guys were probably
See,
not
I
young.
might be thinking of his brother. I
Yeah,
might be I might be thinking of somebody else.
yeah. But the father of Emmett, and you know yeah, I was a he was a mentor for me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did something for him. He never got a driver's license. So he's probably 70 years old, and I took him to get his driver's license. And we shared a lot of information. You know, I was a friend for life when he got his license the first time I took him. In he was a friend for me for life for me. And
Mm.
and he yeah. So and then I had cut him out, and then I needed to talk about my days on the farm and all of those things. Yeah, and I needed to Uncle Lawrence, how we had grew up on that farm, and how
Right.
yeah, how we how we learned things on that farm, and how we conversed, and then we went on it to be on the same ship in the military, and then I have a lot of credit to give him too, and I do because my three brothers and Lawrence being the first one, we were in competition, and I never told him this, but we were in competition because I wasn't going to let those guys pass me in promotions.
No, you can't.
So I did a lot of study. And I managed to stay ahead of Lawrence. But Robert went to the Air Force and he got out and he went to college and he got a commission in the Air Force. However, that wasn't a bad thing. But after I got commissioned, about 2 years later, Lawrence got commissioned, and then we kind of like went on a different era. He was more like an administrative guy, and I was
Mm-hmm.
an operational guy. But he helped me out several times. God put him in some spaces where it just helped me out. And believe it or not, among blacks, they were not able to figure that we was two brothers. And so as a result of that, we never told him about it. And on two different occasions, he helped me out. Yes. Saved the day for me in a couple of situations. So I owe him a lot of that. We don't talk about that, but it was it was a great challenge, and then we both wrote it out so that we retired at the same level. I,
Mm-hmm.
I retired 3 years after he did, but that was a great experience too. And we you might want to interview around that between the two of us too. From that standpoint, when you talk to him, Ask him about, the time that we had together and see what it tells you. It probably is
Okay, I'll
surprised.
have to, yeah, I'll have to inquire about that.
Yes. Yeah. And then Robert, we had a we were- Robert had a there was a big age gap between me and Robert, but once I was in Portland, Oregon for a year, and Robert came up on a weekend, and we were going to church on Sunday. And the church that I went to, they had a 5K that tied up the traffic.
Mm,
And I said to Robert, "We're going to the first church we get to."
mm.
And we go to this church, packed. They didn't have a pastor, but they had a business pastor, was from Chicago. And they were just at the time there were a lot of cults in Portland. And so people were hungry for God, and hopefully that happens again. But we go into church and we had to set up a middle way to church. And that the pastor and his wife came in, the choir was lousy. But the pastor's wife was a choir director. So she did a little homework, and she just set that place on fire. People were
Mm.
singing. And then when the preacher got up, he preached a fiery sermon. About halfway through the sermon, Robert started, "Amen." And they rushed back there and want to know if we was preachers. And we told them no, we weren't preachers. But when they came out, the people got around Robert like he was Jesus. And they began to tell him some of his problems. We couldn't leave. He was praying for them.
Are
And
you serious?
yes, yes, yes. He was praying for these people. And one group would leave, another one would come. We couldn't get away from the church. They really saw Jesus in him.
I guess they did.
They
Well,
saw Jesus.
eventually he did take on that title. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I gained a lot from him. But one of the things I remember about Rob was he had never did a post-grad exam, and he went to do it, and he called me. I never forget. I was walking out of my office, and he said, "Look," he said, "that was me with post-grad cancer," and then hit me up, and he said, "I want you to pray for Bertha because I understand this, but I'm going to be all right." And about 2 years later, I talked to him a couple of days before he passed, and he was still telling me he was all right.
Mm.
And I don't know if you know the story of him, but when he became an elder, the guy who was the pastor there now became an elder the same time he did. And they were great friends. And then they removed the pastor from the church, and the elder became the pastor. Then they two couldn't get along. And this went on for a few years, and I don't know what happened, but they became friends. In the last 2 weeks of his being on earth, the
Yeah.
pastor, the pastor never left the house.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've never got the chance to go back and see the pastor. I had intended to do that, but I have never got to do that either. And maybe I shouldn't go back. That it's been that long now, but I don't know how many years it's been. But that was a great impact. He had a great impact spiritually on me. I can just say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Definitely, definitely. Well, we
yeah.
gonna close out. This has been amazing. I would say you taught us a lot about being your brother's keeper. Granted, you have a lot of brothers
I do.
physically, familiarly, and just in spirit. God has blessed you with a lot of brothers and
A lot of
people
sisters
to
too.
mentor.
Yeah, a lot of sisters too. I
Yeah,
got
a
a lot.
lot of sisters too. Can't forget about the sisters. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Got a lot of sisters out there. I get calls from my former coworkers out here now. And I had a lady who was gay,
hmm.
and I have in writing what she sent me 2 years ago that she had never met a man. She said, "I'm the oldest man she ever met." And
you're the oldest man she's ever
she says, I am the oldest real man that she ever met.
met? What?
Yeah, yeah. And so when she worked for me, when things would happen at night, I could call her any time of the night, and she said, "I'll be there when you get there."
Hmm.
And she was, yeah. And I got to know her family, and she was raised by grandparents, and I got to know them well. They were in a home now because of their age,
Right.
but we went through. I went through a lot of stuff. But I mean, she was a good person, a good worker, and she really helped me in a lot of areas that she, that I wasn't I wasn't as adept in, but she would.
Mm-hmm.
He actually sent me a text, and I know I got it in it's somewhere hidden now. But but you got to love everybody. You can't be judgmental of people. Yeah, so I don't won't talk about people, but the other thing is that we can't get conformed to this world.
Hmm.
That's what I would tell any man is not to conform to. And if you get close to God, you don't have to worry about the news, what they say in the news. God will handle it. It's just like it says in Second Peter and 2. 2 Peter chapter 2 tells you about all the things that's going to happen. And you tell you not to be fret, don't fret about that stuff.
Right.
That's what
Right.
I've learned not to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's going on in the world don't bother me. Yeah. And
I
my
love
neighbors, they know me. I don't know them. They just stop by and I don't know them.
it.
They tell me where they live. But I love them too. Yeah, and I pray for them every day. So, and I love you guys as a family too. Yeah, I'm proud of your mom.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well,
Yes, you.
we're gonna close out here. Stick around for a second. I'm just gonna hit this. Thank you, everyone.